Hey guys, George Mesa, Third Eye Edify podcast. And I am very excited to have back on my good friend Metasoundworx. If you're on the Telegram page, you see his awesome comments and his awesome additions to all the conversations that we have. And he's coming to us across the pond, all the way from Belgium. And I'm very excited to have him back on in really what is a Third Eye Edify first. Much like I say on the show often, give me your ideas. Tell me what you think about things. He does. And this entire outline for this episode is made by him. It's not from me. Normally, as I was telling him before we jumped on, I spend 2 to 6 hours on the outline. Depends. If I don't read an entire book to inspire me as well. And this time around, I told myself, you know what? He's got the outline. I'm gonna go in. I know he's trustworthy, worldly man of all kinds of different topics that we discuss on a regular basis. And I'm very excited to get into it because it may have a little bit of inspiration from the previous Panama Canal episode with Slick Dissident, but this was happening well before he saw that. And I'm very excited to bring you back on the show for this. Thank you so much for coming on. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself in case they didn't see you from the last episode that we had?
Thanks for the lovely introduction. Glad to be here. Telling something about myself, I don't consider that so much to be important. I'll just say today's episode is about language, about 3 languages, about sound, about metasound more specifically, about how metasound works. It's mostly about speaking and the sounds of our speech, about the sound of our own instrument, and the true speech that we do. That will be the contents of this show.
Very cool. Very cool. I think that it's a really important topic, actually. And we went over some, I mean, it's my show, but I think we had some really important topics last time too. Mm-hmm. And we maybe even cleared up a few, burning questions that people have for their entire lives, even silly things like how far does the cotton swab go in your ear and all that stuff. We talked about a lot of different things. And one of the things that came up, which may lead directly into this whole conversation, is I was asking about particularly the shape of the ear, the outer ear. Mm-hmm. It has a very specific look to it. It almost seems like you're ending a maze and you get to the final, part of it. And you had said that in your opinion, because you weren't 100%, I mean, does anyone really know? You said it may mainly have to do with the taking in of language, how language is heard in our ears. Because the more I research things about language, the more I keep coming up with the very simple conclusion that written language may have taken a very long time after we had started speaking, whatever languages we may have started speaking at first. Whether or not we believe in, the whole caveman evolution thing is a whole nother topic. But all right, I think that having said all that, first of all, if you're watching this and you love it, definitely go check out our previous episode, because I think that you will find it to be just as awesome. It was, let's see here, episode 41, and this is 51. Look at that. What are the chances of that, right? Okay, so go for it, man. Let's get started. We have a very specific set of letters to kind of dig into.
Yes.
And you have so many different ways that we're going to discuss it. And it's all going to happen in part 1. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, let's dig in. Okay. We start with 4 letters. The letter P, the letter R, the letter D, and the letter S. But we pronounce it Pardesh. So we don't consider the vowels. Mm-hmm. We only consider the consonants. And these letters are so important because they form our word paradise. Me, as a guy from Belgium, we say paradise.
Right.
Our neighbors here in French, they say paradis. So it's a very important word to consider because it's something we all aim for. We all want to live in paradise, don't we?
Right.
And so I read about it in a text from a Jewish Kabbalist. The text is called the Zohar. And it is a specific story that I want to share about Pardesh. It's a story about paradise, about 4 rabbis that visited a garden. And the word Pardesh, it comes from the old Aramaic languages, from the Persian languages, and it means something like orchard or garden. And so these four rabbis, they visited this garden, and it is said that three of them, they gave the garden a good look, but they got damaged. Only one of them got out completely. He went in peace, and he returned in peace. So this guy, he found the key to paradise, and the three others, they didn't. The first one is said to have been cutting down trees. The second one is said to have been murdering other species in the garden, so killing animals, etc. And the third one, during his looking around, he found honey, but he ate too much. So the first one, the hidden meaning of this is that the first one, he turned his back to the Torah. The Torah, the word of God, the truth. It is someone who turned his back to truth. He lost his faith. The second one is said to also have died. And the third one, he went crazy. He lavished so much of all there is to see in this garden that he went completely mad. But this story is shared for one particular reason, and that is to teach us the four ways of interpretation. There are four ways when we hear a story, when we read a story, when we see something. There are four ways in which we interpret things. And that's what these guys have done. And once we are able to master all four of them, then we have the key to paradise. That's what the last guy did. He can enter and leave paradise whenever he wants because he mastered all the four ways of interpreting, of comprehension. These four ways are, the first one is taking things literally. And this is depicted by the letter P in Pardesh. So taking things literally. The second way of interpretation is the figurative, the allegorically, the allegorical way of interpreting things. So adding different meanings to a same word, using double speak, for example. The third way of interpretation is jurisdictionally, dividing things in good and bad. Very black and white way of thinking, the dualistic way of thinking, dividing everything in opposites. Right. But more specifically, being very judgmental about it. So, first one, literally. Second one, allegorically. Third one, jurisdictionally. And this is also depicted in the four letters, which, by the way, are, if you pronounce them in Aramaic, the first one is called pshat. The second one is called remez. The third one is called drash. And the fourth one is called sod. And this last one, sod, translates as secret. It's a secret way of interpreting things. It's a way that we only learn once we have mastered the three previous ones. And this secret way of interpreting is using our inner compass. Is using our built-in nature to interpret a story. And one way to put it is refrain from using all the other ways.
Right.
So don't take things literally. Don't go searching for allegories in everything. Don't be judgmental and don't keep secrets. And this is how we reach true honor. When we are finally an honest being, we can create our own happy feelings. At all times, we can enter paradise and go back out of it because we are able to create our own joy, to create our own path, to create our own happiness and blessedness. And because we are able to interpret stories in 4 ways. And that also means we can recognize in others when they are doing this. When somebody is using doublespeak, once we master doublespeak, we know what they are saying. Once someone is being very judgmental, we witness this. We feel their anger, and when someone is keeping secrets, same thing. When we are honest ourselves and our vibrations don't sync up with the vibrations of the other, we know there's something missing. So these 4 ways are also some kind of pathway through life. In the Zohar, but that's just allegorically, it is said that you cannot read the Zohar before you are 40 and married.
I've heard this, that the Kabbalahs, the Jewish mysteries, they don't allow you till you're 40. Yeah, I've heard that.
And this is because the first way, taking things literally, we do this in the first decade of our lives. And then it is said in the second decade, we learn about doublespeak and about double meaning of words and allegories and figurative speech. And in the third decade of our life, we start becoming judgmental about this. We start to rebel, we start to see this is good, this is bad. And it is actually a journey, just like the hero's journey, in which we go through 3 dark nights of the soul. We travel over them 3 times, from the P to the R, from literal to figurative to allegorical, and then from the R to the D. So we travel from taking things in doublespeak to being judgmental, and then finally we teach ourselves the shh, and then we know the secret, and we can have inner peace at all times. We are not judgmental anymore, etc. And the cool thing about this is that it is actually built in the sounds itself also. So it's not just the symbol of the letter P, but there is literally only one way to create a P. You press your lips together and then you pop them.
Right.
There is only one way. But then the letter R can be pronounced in many different ways. And that's when the doublespeak sets in.
Right.
So, for example, here in Belgium, we use the R with the tip of our tongue.
Right.
We say R.
Right.
You in America, you say R. You make this little gutter, and you let the air flow.
Right.
And in the French country, they use the back of their tongue, and they add a little saliva to it, and they go R.
Yeah.
So there is 3 places in which we can pronounce an R sound. So that's the doublespeak aspect. And then third, there is the D in Pardesh. That's a mouth stance, in which we are very dualistic. We can only say, if we use the same, if we place the tongue similarly, we can only speak D or T. It's the same sound. The T is only making use of our skull, our head, as a resonating chamber of our mouth.
Right.
And the D uses the entire body. And that's it. It's a very dualistic thing also. So it's built in the sound. You can only say D or T in this particular mouth stance. Depending if you use your body, if you are holistic, you say D. If you are only in your mind and you only use your headspace, you say T. And then last but not least is the sh sound. We will see later on the speech banana that the S can be interchanged for a lot of sounds. There is the sh, the h, the k, the and of all these sounds, the sh sound is the most complete one. It has all the frequencies, so it's not lying to you. It has everything. So it is the meaning and the four ways of interpreting things are baked within us, in our own sound. In the P, the different R's, the dualistic DT, and then the S, the sh sound. And that's the first story in this episode, the story of the Pardesh.
That's wonderful. Really, what a start, man. I am intrigued. I would watch this. I would watch this episode. I'm learning a lot just by hearing this. Can you remind, if anyone wants to find this story specifically, remind them where this exactly comes from?
Well, it's in the Zohar.
The Zohar.
But it takes some time to understand the Zohar. It's not written in English.
Right. You heard a lecture of an interpretation, or you read a lecture?
Yeah.
Okay.
A rabbi taught me this. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Well, if you want to, if there is a link, maybe we'll put it in the show notes if it's available. But I
read it in Dutch.
You read it in Dutch. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think people have enough info here. If they're hungry, they'll find it, because this is clearly a masterfully put together story.
Yeah.
And something that was just on my mind as I was thinking about this and as you were talking, because I've had a few language episodes, as you know, and a lot of times, some languages that are consonantory, they write it where you see the consonant and they don't write the vowels. And that's because the consonants are a little more set in stone, where, like you just mentioned how Pardesh comes out, or how paradise comes out in different countries. Obviously the PRDS is there.
Yeah.
The other things are what change.
And what's cool, for example, is in France, the secret is missing. They say paradis.
Paradis.
They don't pronounce the S. It's missing.
And it's written, though, even more interesting. It's on the paper, because I've sung in French many times from different composers.
Or for you in America, think about all the words that end in ED.
Right.
You don't say the D.
Right.
You pronounce it T.
It's a T, yes. Happens very often. And a lot of times when people are, especially if you watch like somebody like me making a show, if you're deep in thought or you're flowing, more of a flow state, even if you have your notes, sometimes words that you would say with a D, they come out with a little bit more of a T. And I only noticed it. I noticed several things here while having to sing often in other languages, because I've done the music route, very thoroughly. And one of the first things that we were told is this D is a T if we're singing German. And then, of course, if we were to just do a rhythmic study of the piece without worrying about singing the notes, because we were fresh on it, we're trying to get the rhythm together because rhythm is everything, we would often use T. We would just get T, because it is just T. And while all those languages that don't write with vowels work, you don't have anything until you have a vowel. You can't sing the letter T. There's nothing to sing. It's just, that's what T is.
It's headspace only.
Like you said, skull. Exactly. You need the resonance, and everything else comes from the vowel, which is a very big part of how this all comes out. And then the sh thing is also a really big part of raising a child. I mean, it just comes up a lot. It's a very catchy thing. Sometimes you can use it for animals.
Also, the sh sound is the highest sound that we make.
Interesting. That seems very accurate. Now that you're saying it, makes a lot of sense. Yep. Yeah. Even when, again, just to make a obvious reference for musical things, like if a whole chorus goes shh, it hits the whole hall completely differently than any other sound. You're right.
Yeah.
100%.
You will see this later on the sonogram. Remind me to show this. The difference between an S and a sh. It's a lot.
Yeah, for the sonogram. Yep.
Yeah.
S versus sh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And when studying languages,
Right.
we often use this on the inverse. They call it the cipher, where you can switch languages, letters between languages. And so there is this thing. Why is that? Because we use the same mouth stance or the same, for example, the letter M and the letter N.
Right.
There is not much difference. It's the same thing. The M is closed, lips are closed. M and N is lips are open. Another thing I had to say about that was the letter N. That is our natural resting point. If we are relaxed,
I see.
the tip of our tongue is resting on this. We call it the papilla incisiva, the little bulge behind the two front teeth. There our tongue is resting. And when we are relaxed, so the most easy sound to pronounce, or when we are really enjoying our meal, we don't even open our mouth.
Right. Right. And yet we're still using a vowel almost. Like we're using
and this is
that open mouth.
Also in music why we use the word N when reading a rest. N is our natural rest.
Right.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's because N is our natural rest.
Sure, it flows better if you go faster too. There's a lot of, you could try other things, but once the tempo raises, that flows so much better. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It just works. Even if you don't know what I just said, like you get
it's
it.
our starting point to start speaking.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. And with during the course of my musical studies, as you can tell, I obviously sung plenty, and it wasn't. I was playing bass guitar, so I wasn't in the orchestra. Okay, that's why. I was not an orchestral instrument. So we had 2 different masters come. One was German, and the other one was Russian. And when the German one was there, he had us smell this beautiful flower. The first thing we did, very first thing. It's a great vocal exercise because it's a point of rest. And the Russian had the same thing. He said, And he almost wanted like an H on his, though, kind of. But yes, it's a very commonly used thing. And I think anyone watching will immediately like, wow, I see. Yeah,
it's a common yogic practice also. In yoga, the buzzing breath, the breath of the bees.
Right.
You instead of doing an Om mantra, you just close your mouth and go.
Right, and the Om. That's the last one, right? Om is, of course.
It's also the midpoint in the alphabet.
Right.
So it's the resting point in the entire hero's journey, traveling from A to Z. N is where we start to go up again.
That's right. 13 down, 13 up. As I had thought of it, but once I read the esoteric structure of the alphabet, I had a much, much clearer picture of the descent and then the rising again. Yes.
Yeah. And one thing we use also is the symbol U.
Right.
This is a depiction that has been added later to the alphabet, and it describes the entire journey. You start at the top, you go down, and you go back up again.
Right.
No matter in which direction you read it, from left to right, right to left, it is the esoteric hero's journey.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned that, because I'm all about what's inverted in the world on this show, as you know. And very often, as they show you how to solo over a jazz tune or how to write a story, it often is the inversion. The bell goes the other way, start here, reach the climax, find your way back to where we started. It's like inverted almost. Yeah. It's a very interesting situation.
That's how we speak also.
Yes,
we go up in our intonation, and if we ask a question, we stop there, and the other one has to go down again.
Yes.
But if we just say a sentence, we go up in the sentence, and at the end of the sentence, we return.
The full flow, yes. This is the antecedent and the consequent in music and anything else. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well said, man. Well said.
And so this hero's journey is also depicted in the word wise. It means that we have done this thing 3 times. We have done the Dark Night of the Soul 3 times. It is said in the Hermes story, Hermes Trismegistus, 3 times great. Yeah. it is depicted in the word wise. If you see you don't look at the vowels,
Right.
just the W and the S. It is a W, so twice the
Right.
U, twice the hero's journey, and then the Sh. You have gone from P over R to D to Sh.
Yep.
So the word wise is 3 times the hero's journey. And that's the people we respect, we call them wise because they know the secret.
Right. Very true. And that word, unlike the way things are around these parts lately, people just use words freely and don't really think about what they actually mean. And very often words are being misused a lot lately, especially with the texting, internet culture, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, TikTok, doesn't matter. But that word wise is really reserved for impactful moments, I feel. And I'm just going on a whim in my own thoughts and my whole life, but that word is not used very often. And I was just talking to my wife about the word wealthy versus rich. Same thing. I don't think people say wealthy nearly as much as like, oh, he's rich, he's rich, he's rich. Wealthy is reserved for that when you really want to mean it.
It's the same thing, but in Hebrew. It's the W and the T, the Tav, the end letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
Right.
So it's twice the hero's journey and then to the Tav.
I see that. And same thing with, if you relate the Hebrew alphabet to the major arcana of the tarot, same thing. The Tav is the world. It's everything. It's where it should end. Yes. Everything all in one.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, everything we just discussed, every little silly thing that has to do with like life experiences or just thoughts, they all come down to the story you just told. It's an incredible story. It's a very smartly written one, much like any holy book.
Turning back to the story, the main message of the story is these 4 ways of interpretation. And this is a kind of cipher that we can use also. When we see and we take as starting point the word Pardesh. And we see other words where some letter switch has happened.
Right.
We now know what is going on. If we miss the S, then it is someone who doesn't have the capacity to interpret from inner compass. If the D is switched to a T, for example, then we know there is something jurisdictionally not correct. So every letter switch almost has a meaning to it.
Wow.
Even if we switch places. For example, I like this with the word priest.
Yeah.
Priest has the same 4 letters as Pardesh, but the last S is switched with the D.
Right.
And the T and the D have switched.
Right.
So what are priests? Priests are the ones that confuse their own inner compass with jurisdiction. They act like they are the voice of God. So they confuse the correct order of interpretation. And they switch the D and the T. So they are very much about, you should not do this. They are very judgmental. You're a sinner, you're etc.
Right. And of course, they make others that they want you to feel that way about seem that way as well. And the word act, like you said, is really a big part of it, especially with all the acts being passed by law, or apparently in our government lately. So yeah, it's a big word. It's a big word. It's a big stage.
You can go through entire dictionaries with this word, especially in the English language.
Pardish, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. The more I think about it, it just keeps happening.
You mentioned I call it pirate language because of the pirates. It's also Pardes, but the D and T switch happened.
Right.
So pirates, they live in a fake paradise. They try to be in a fake paradise. And I'll get back to this later on in the show.
Cool, because that might actually be, I guess, the link to the previous Panama episode that I had with Slick.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Big time. Really. It's really cool, man. I love this topic.
Yeah.
And this could easily be 3 days of talking straight very easily. And I know that, and that's why it's so interesting that we've really only discussed the opening story here. I mean, it's so cool, man. Maybe we could quickly discuss Inner Compass, because that's one thing that I personally, and I don't really, whatever you want to call it, toot my own horn very often, but my inner compass is so freaking strong, you know? And I think everyone's really is. The difference between a lot of people is whether they're trained out of it through fear, through the typical systems that people go through, schooling, you know, parenting, that parents that went to that same school. You're trained to fight your own instincts. And that's why the Matrix keeps winning with cubicle slaves. People keep getting these, you know, I need a 401k, I need this, I need that. They're just in fear. They never grow. And they learn and are trained to fight their inner compass. So the secret is never revealed to them. And it remains a secret, as a matter of fact. And little things like this, just telling someone this story, you never know, it could open their eyes. I mean, having the inner compass is one of the most important things that we have. Listening to it is one of the hardest things we have to unlearn to get back on track with.
Yeah,
it's one of the easiest ways for humanity to grow right now, I think.
Yeah, the way I would describe it is through the ego. The inner compass has always been there, but it has been clouded by egotistical thinking and by the way that we are schooled and groomed to think. But that's also part of the journey. We need to go through 3 phases, and mostly these are very dark nights of the soul, so they are in a state of complete despair. It is, I would think that people go through 3 times complete desperation. And then they turn back and they see the light. If they go through 3 times, that's the wisdom stage. So all this so-called darkness that we witness around us, it has a purpose. It has a function. It feeds or it pushes the ones that need to go to total desperation. Still,
I like that, you know, and I think it's a big part of growing up, especially when you're really young. You know, you got to knock over the vase and break it to get some kind of a lesson. Sometimes, you know, it's unfortunate, and
then you have let's call them the priest class. They try to fake this. They have this knowledge, and they try to push their children early on, as fast as possible, through 3 stages of total despair, thinking that nature will not do this to them, but it does.
Right.
So they go to an overkill of desperation.
Right. And just like you said, I want to reword it in my own thoughts. So because it's really perfectly said, like as if it won't naturally happen, right? As if nature would not provide this for you. We get what we need. We exist for, you know, who knows, many reasons, but if there's one thing we do well, it's we grow. We are meant to grow and learn and keep growing and not stagnate. That's just the purpose here. As long as you keep watering the plants, you know? Yes, I think that's a very big part of the success of it. Is that
it's a very the start of this journey, the start of actually reaching the last phase. Always, no matter which mystery school you read or you look at, it always starts with someone accepting to be honest from now on, to always speak the truth. That's always the first step. You decide, I'm going to speak the truth now, no matter what. If I don't know it, I will just simply say I don't know it.
Right.
But I'll be honest about it. And like that, we develop this inner compass that can vibrate with others, and we can recognize this in others. That's how we grow empathy. That's how we feel, okay, this person, I can trust him or her because I vibrate with this. It feels good what he or she is saying. So that's the hardest step to do. The first step, like in the tarot card, the Fool card or the Soul card, the step in the abyss, the hardest step is to have the ego say, okay, I was wrong. I will not lie anymore. I was wrong. I will speak truth from now on.
and it comes right back to focusing on your inner compass, because right away it's going to say, hey, has this ever worked for you yet? Why don't we give it up now? It hasn't done any good for us so far, and that may include little white lies too. Unless you're hiding a birthday gift or something, there's no reason. It's never going to do anything. And I think kids realize it early on, but the way school is and other things like it, you almost feel like you have to lie to just get an extra day off of school and sleep instead of taking a test or something. You just feel like trapped, and how do I get out of this thing? You're forced almost into it. And that's, these are excuses, but I think the modern child understands this problem, and they just don't know where it's coming from, and they don't express it. That's for damn sure. So then no one knows, and they can't solve it. They can't do things naturally. Yeah, I guess it really comes down to that, really. How often are we allowed to
now that you say this,
naturally grow?
The word trapped, link it to Pardesh.
There it is.
It's the anagram, and it's the letter switcheroo. Yeah.
Right. You're right. Yeah. It's going to be there. It's going to be there a lot. And don't be surprised, everyone keeping score at home. Don't be surprised at all. So I think we could keep going on this, but we made some good points, especially the dark nights of the soul, the 4 ways, the secret, knowing the secret by knowing the other 3, living through them naturally and not having it forced. You can write this on a chalkboard for a 7-year-old. It's not really going to mean much. They do have to live. And I think it's curious. A lot of times cycles are shown in 7 years and things of that nature, 4 years. But here we see the 10-year cycle. And it's often left out of the modern conversation because we have a lot of 12s and things that we are told occur in nature. Meanwhile, sometimes it's 13. It depends, moon cycles, let's say. It depends on what you're looking at and how you think about it.
Yeah.
They tell us there's 12 notes in the chromatic scale. That's kind of not natural either. So it's
I don't think it has to be 10 years. I think each and every one of us have our own rhythm.
Yeah, right.
Tempo to discover this.
It's culture too, it's culture too. Depends on what you are exposed to and what you can and can do. If you never saw a bicycle or a car, you're not going very far. So maybe the things will happen quicker. You just don't know. You don't know. It could be a close friend dying, for example. You revolve immediately because you think about everything you never thought about, or you put things into perspective you never wanted to or needed to. You just don't know what's going to do it. You never know. But
it's unique for every one of us. The manifestation of it is unique, but the story can be told conceptually as in the Pardesh story.
Right. But it is interesting, though, that you mentioned the 40 with the Kabbalah, because I heard that exact number, and I guess that's one of the reasons why they do tell you have to wait till you're 40. I mean, you should live something of a life before entering into this information.
It's actually telling you need to master these ways of interpretation, and you cannot master them by just reading them. You have to actually experience them and have hands-on
nature has to run its course, in other words, right? With the natural way of things, yeah. So does that bring us right into your next bullet point here, indoctrination school? Because we already sort of discussed it, but what do you think?
Let me see if we covered everything.
Of course.
I have to add the letter Shin. This is, in the Kabbalistic text, the most important letter.
Really?
And there is this cute little story. The letter Shin is this W sign with the 3 flames on it.
Yep.
It is said that earlier it was written with a 4th leg, with another flame on it. So that's the 4th element that is missing.
Oh.
In many other schools, there is a 4th pillar missing.
Right.
Or in this Loki series that we've been following on the Universe, there's a 4th timekeeper. Yeah, there's a 4th timekeeper missing. It's all related to this Pardesh story.
Oh, and it's directly said in the show, we're missing the 4th timekeeper, or you have to kind of search for it?
There are only 3, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting too, because later on, if you can see it in the thumbnail behind us, we're going to discuss the Sphinx, and that's one of the stories. How many legs does this animal walk on during its life? So interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
And then there's also this movie that you told me to watch lately, and it started and ended with a gate, and the slogan said, "No trespassing." This means no trees passing.
No trees.
You have to have the fourth pillar. If you are just P, R, and D, you're not passing into paradise.
Right.
Passing is also the entire journey from P to S, to pass. So no trees passing. If you are a fourth, then you can pass the gate.
Wow.
It's in many stories. I saw the Holy Grail movie from Monty Python.
Right.
It has the same thing, crossing a bridge,
Right.
in which you have to answer three questions, and then a fourth later on.
Some questions easier than others.
Yeah.
What is your favorite color? Yeah, that movie is something else.
But the link to the indoctrination school thing is in the speech banana first. Could you maybe pull up the speech banana? Do you have it somewhere, or
Yes, I could.
otherwise I could show it?
If you have it right now, you can show it. Yeah.
I could place it.
Let's see who gets it first.
I can show my thing.
There it is.
Here is the speech banana.
Yep.
I had it ready.
Wonderful.
Okay, so this is for the visually minded people. Those that do not have the ears to hear yet. If we say sh is the most high sound, yeah,
Right.
you can literally see this here. So this is the range of the average human speech. From left to right, you see the frequency, the pitch, the height of the sound.
Right.
So the low tones are on the left, and the high tones are on the right side. And the vertical, the x-axis, the y-axis, I'm sorry,
Right.
has the loudness, the average loudness on an average distance. But that's not so important for this conversation.
Right.
Here we see the sounds that we can create. We all share this. We all have this in common. These are the sounds that we can make. They are written in the English on this diagram. And so you can see this distinction at the 1000 hertz. There are sounds that are to the left of this, and there are sounds that are to the right of this. You can see this as one grand octave.
Right.
The octave from 100 to 1000, and the octave from 1000 to 10,000. Yeah. And what you see here is the placement of the fundamental pitch. It's not the entire sound.
Right.
It's just the fundamental pitch. And this can be used as a cipher. So why can we switch an F and an S sound all the way to the right? The F and the S, because they are very closely related sound-wise. They sound very similar.
I love to see that on paper. Amazing.
Yeah. All our vowel sounds are on the left side,
Right.
in the first octave. That's when we use our body to speak. All the very transient sounds.
Everything. Right.
Yeah. All the very transient sounds are on the right side when we only use our skull.
It's interesting because there's a certain level of training where you do need to resonate vowels in your skull, but it's very different. It's not the spark or the creation of that. That comes from all over here. But then you use the resonating chamber beyond.
That's what they teach opera singers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They said you want to feel it. You want to feel it in your third eye. That's what they tell you. If you're not feeling something here, you're just not maximizing. And it's training. It's like it is an instrument, of course. You must train, and it is the most versatile instrument. And now we can see that it can be the most deceptive too. This is how birds are able to mimic machine sounds and stuff. The voice at certain levels can be very deceptive. And here we can see how easy it is to deceive someone just by changing a vowel or by changing a consonant in the language itself.
Yeah. So we'll get back to the speech banana later on.
Sure.
The next topic is the topic of the indoctrination school. Huh?
Right.
Okay. This is a thing that you guys in America, you don't use anymore. Over here, we have this thing built in our language that when addressing someone in second person, we make a distinction between addressing them casually or addressing them respectfully, addressing them politely. It is also the private versus public thing, but that's another story.
Right.
And we actually use other words for it. If we address someone, we say jij or je as casual way of speaking to someone.
Right.
And if we are meeting a stranger or are trying to be respectful, we say u. And we write this as the u.
Right.
So the u, that depicts the entire journey. We use this as a way of politeness, just like saying someone is wise.
Right.
And it is built in our language. Nobody tells us why. And I've translated for you a passage from the language book, The Advanced Teachings of Dutch.
Cool.
And this says the following. I'm just going to read it.
Sure.
1. Use the jij form for friends, acquaintances, youth till about 18 years old, and family members whom are equally old or young as you. In general, can the trustee form be used when also the first name is being used? 2. Use the you form, the u, for strangers older than 18 years old, for elderly, and for persons with whom you only have a business-like relationship. For example, in stores, in meetings, or persons whom are placed higher, teachers, physicians, priests, etc. In general, the politeness form is used when sir, madam, or a title like professor, master, or any other title is used.
Right.
Family members whom are older than you are nowadays addressed more and more with jij. 3. The proposition to say jij in situations where age or status of the interlocutor differs should be based on the premise of the elder or the higher ranking. In other situations, when in doubt, one is guided by common sense and tact.
Right.
So this is directly from the advanced teachings of Dutch, in which the priest class has embedded that we have to address them politely. The teachers, the physicians, the priests, the professors, everyone who has a title should be addressed with the word u, the entire hero's journey.
Right.
As if they went through it already, but it's not.
Right.
So this is something, the French language has this also. They make a distinction between tu and vous. And they even have a verb for it. They call it tutoyer and vous voyez. If you talk to someone casually or politeful or respectful. And this is something, it's like they have managed to teach us this. It's because why would we call someone who has not gone through the entire Pardesh story? Why would we be making this distinction of you are so great, you are 3 times great, let's call you U. And we just do this naturally because we are taught this when we are little at school.
Right.
I do this still daily. When I meet a stranger, I say U. I don't say je.
Right.
In English, you always say you. It's just if you are being casual, you simply say you. But my best guess is that you also used to have this difference with the word thou.
Right.
Because if we look at thou from the Pardesh story, the first letter T is the tav.
Right.
The O is the omega. the Greek ending of the alphabet.
Right.
And then there's another U. So it's also 3 times the Dark Night of the Soul. So I'm thinking that's just a random guess of me, or some synchronicity that I noticed. Maybe in English it used to be also that you had to say you to someone who had gone through one hero's journey, and thou to someone who had gone through them 3 times.
That would make a lot of sense, especially because knowing what we already discussed about the nature of the alphabet itself and the hero's journey, the path of it, that the word you is actually the exact same way that we say the letter U all by itself. There is no difference whatsoever. Y-O-U for us is U, the letter U spelled out with 3 letters unnecessarily, as a lot of our language seems to waste certain things, or letters at least. So that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Comparing languages, you can derive this knowledge. So from the Dutch and the French, there is still this difference today. In America, there is not, but probably it was. It's my best guess.
I want to quickly off-rail in this exact topic because I think it'd be very interesting for a lot of people that watch here in the States, and there's people watching around the world, which I just so thrilled about, and thank you all, by the way. I personally was always confused about, Netherlands, Dutch, Deutschland, Holland. You're near there, right? Netherlands is your northern border, is that right?
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
So can you maybe get a little more into, just for a moment, what do you know about, like, do we call it Holland? I know that we're not supposed to, or maybe we do.
I never knew it. I've always wondered, why do English-speaking people call it Dutch? Because we say Nederlands.
Right, you don't even use the term whatsoever.
No.
Unbelievable.
It's just it's not something we use. There is a region in the Netherlands where they speak Diets. And the German people we call them Duitsland. Right. Germans themselves refer to themselves as Deutschland.
Right.
So there is the DT or the DTS. Yeah. It's there.
Yeah, it is. Interesting.
The way I look at it now is from the DT switch. It literally says DT switch. DTS.
DTS, yeah.
Yeah. It literally spells DT switch.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. And this is what comes from looking deeper into these things, because you're in a very interesting location in Europe. And based on what you told us last time in episode 41 about, how many different governments you have, which I still can't even get over because of all the different, there's one for each language or a few for each language that you have there.
Yeah.
And this is why you're in a really good spot to know all these things. Yeah. The US might be the melting pot or whatever, but you're kind of like almost the melting pot of Europe as far as I can tell. And I don't know any better, but it's interesting that you can have all these perspectives. But to end that little
side, I feel like we're in the half of it, because we also have the European Parliament here.
Right.
But they also reside in France.
Is that in Brussels?
Yeah.
Right.
There is the European Parliament in Brussels, and there is one in Paris also.
And that's it for all of Europe?
Yeah.
Oh,
they travel between those 2 locations.
Oh.
That's where they gather.
Wow.
And we also have a president. Did you know that?
No.
There is a European president.
No, I don't think I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the name is?
No, I'm.
Maybe if I heard the name, I would know
the politics anymore.
Yeah, well, I
knew we had a Belgian guy some time ago. But...
Right. Yeah, if I heard the name, I might know the name and not realize that that's who. Yeah, I guess I've heard EU Parliament President. Maybe is that the official term? Maybe I have heard that actually, but I'm not paying attention enough to care that that's even a title. They would get an U, right? How do you say it? U.
What do you mean?
How do you say it with the when you address someone?
U.
U. U.
U.
U.
Like mural. U.
U. Okay.
The U in mural.
If I spend time, I don't want to embarrass. I'll spend the time. I'll make it right. So I love that you mentioned the private versus public, because a lot of times this does fall into that, almost rank. You have to say you must address by rank, because of course we're the,
Yeah.
we're better. You need to let us know.
That's how they have built in hierarchy in our language.
Right.
We are naturally inclined to use hierarchy, something that doesn't exist. We are all of equal value here.
That's right.
But we have to have these ranking titles and then address them accordingly.
Right. It almost works into, and just like silly side note, but it works into the whole tipping culture around here. Like you tip these people, but you don't tip these people, And I, as a private music instructor, I used to make, $300 to $600 right at the end of the year. Because a lot of times with the weekly lessons, you lose a few in December for the holidays, and maybe the early January is not so great either. So people would give you at least one lesson's worth of money to be like, I know we're not going to see you for like 2 weeks. Here's some money. And then as soon as COVID hit, that just dropped off completely to like less than $100. That whatever, not important, not good or bad, but the tipping culture is very strange. Mm-hmm. These people get all these tips, and then everyone else gets nothing. Like everyone deserves the right amount of money to begin with, where we shouldn't have to tip. And if you want to tip, you do, But
we don't have that here, the tipping culture, or it is growing. It's really coming over from America. Yeah.
Oh wow.
The American enterprises that are having sections here, they bring it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they bring the culture with them. In other words,
for example, food delivery things.
Right.
Food delivery companies, they also start asking tips now for the delivery guy.
Well, that culture is taking over around here too.
Yeah.
Big time. People are like, I need my alcohol and cigarettes and fast food. So can you just bring them all at once? And they do. They're like, yeah, we'll stop at the liquor store for you after buying your fake food. Sure. Oh, it's crazy, man. All right. So your next bullet point is the spelling trickster spell.
Yes.
Do you feel like that's the next thing?
Yep.
All right.
Let's see. The thing of the DT switch in the Dutch language doesn't end there. It's not only in the word you. It's not only in the addressing of people. It's also in the conjugation of our verbs. There is a weird thing that we are taught in school, and we are not taught why. And this is, I call it, it's literally called spelling. How to spell words.
Right.
So in the spelling lessons, we get taught that at the end of a verb, in second person, when addressing someone, we should add an extra T. Even if we do not pronounce it, we should add an extra T. And when do we need to do this? And we are taught this little mnemonic to remember the sounds.
Right.
It is only when a certain sound is sounding. And this mnemonic goes like tkofschip or tvokschap. If I would make an English mnemonic, it would sound the fake ship.
Right.
So all these sounds, T, F, K, sh, h. If the verb ends in this sound, add an extra T. It's almost like saying, add an extra hero's journey. And it is mostly used when addressing someone politely. When using the you form, when using the polite form, add an extra T in writing. So it's like they make up for their fake status,
Sure, and it almost adds to the priest class. The T looks like a cross. I mean, let's be real about the image.
Well, that's the thing. It is from the priest class. The priest class the monks are the ones that could write.
Right.
Yeah? They devised these rule sets. They devised this language thing. It's an old spell, I think. It's a very tricky spell because nobody knows and it's so confusing.
Right.
Ask any Dutch or Flemish person. Ask them about the DT switch, about writing D's or T's at the end of a verb.
Right.
And there is so much discussion about it, and it's made fun of. And can you even spell? It's an extra T behind a verb when addressing politely.
And you pronounce it, or it's only written?
It's only written.
You never use it when you speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you don't do it on your school project, it counts as a mistake. It counts wrong.
Yeah, especially when you learn the Dutch grammar, the Dutch grammatica. If it's a spelling test, yeah.
So I see that there's going to be a connection here with what we're going to talk about in part 2 regarding the Sphinx and the story of judges.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting because, it's almost like they're catching you like, you never even went to school, did you? Because you say it just fine, right? You're speaking perfectly fine, but you have no idea that there's a freaking T on that word. It's like we have words like that here too, like burrow has a GH at the end. You know what I mean? There's we have no reason for any of that crap. It makes no sense. And the word borrow doesn't have it. It has a W, right? So there's all these little, and neighborhood, NEIGH, beautiful, BEAUT. You would never guess that has how that is spelled. But you're caught you're wrong if you don't know that. You just have to know it. And that's why I always thought that learning how to read and write English would be something of a nightmare for most people that are coming from, especially like an Southeast Asian language, let's say. And, you hear it in how differently they use their words. V's or W's for Indians. That's it. They're not even going to say the V. And I get it. Please, they still speak better than a lot of people I know, actually. Yeah. But, and your English is great too, man. Really,
I have watched too many American movies.
The Holy Grail. Just watch the Holy Grail. You'll learn all the words you ever needed to know, and you'll be just fine. So that's very intriguing. And I see now it's clearly going to relate to what we're going to discuss. But it's more than that, isn't it? I mean, it's so indicative of the typical. Now we're getting into more of the private versus public, like you need to hire a lawyer because you don't know because you're an idiot thing. And I see that too. It's harmful. And people would say like, you guys are you're just riffing on BS at this point. This is nothing. This is nonsense. But
it's a way to be very stern against children. You have to write this T.
Yeah. What do you mean? I've never said it. This is the confusion. This is where the confusion lives. It lives in the writing. And then, because, you could say something your whole life and then you see it on paper. And now the funny thing is now we're almost coming around, or at least we're doing one of these, because now with the texting culture, ever since word processors came out and were able to correct you, a lot of people, they're like, wait a minute, how do you spell that word? Because I think it's 2 D's or there's 2 R's. And then you see it on paper. You're like, oh, wait, is that even right? You could type and then you look back and be like, is that even right? I don't remember. People forget, just like Animal Farm. They forget the laws and then they could make subtle changes and you would never know. If you changed, let's just be totally random. If you changed 40 words, or if you even just changed the placement of 40 different words in the US Constitution, I would dare to say that 97% of the population would have no idea. I would never know about it.
It's happening. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother episode easily.
Yeah.
But and you have similar scenarios going on with you, I'm sure. I know that some pretty crazy stuff's going on by you too. And it's all part of the show. And we know better. But like you said, until you live these dark nights, it's hard to tell. Yep. It's easy to tell when someone's being judgmental, but the double speak comes with practice. And nowadays, it's almost too easy now, and it's almost scary how easy it is. I look at any American news publication and say, okay, they're saying this. First of all, it means that the complete opposite of this, and that this is indeed going to happen soon enough. This thing they're saying isn't going to happen. You just got to go a total 180 on what they're saying. Just reverse it. It's so funny how their doublespeak isn't hidden anymore. It's the opposite of what we're saying is really coming.
Yes, and when using the key of Pardesh,
right,
you can also know the meaning of all these 3-letter things, these 3-letter companies, these 3-letter abbreviations of things, often relate to P, R, and D. For example, DTS.
Right.
Dolby Theater Sound.
Right.
DT switch.
DT switch. There it is. And this very prominent thing that we all experience, it's there all the time. Mm-hmm. Wow.
But I'll explain this in the second part. I have not explained yet the fake ship, the little mnemonic.
Right.
What it does to confuse us and how it works. But let's skip that and go to the second part.
Okay, yeah, we're going to leave that because it looks like we're really following our notes well. And I made a big chunk of notes about the story from Zohar, but I'm going to look into that further, on the side eventually, because I'm very curious about more of the details. It's a really, as most holy books and of this nature, it's a very smartly, to use a silly word, very smartly written thing. And it doesn't hide much, especially when somebody like you quickly brings light to what it's saying. It's a very on its face thing. It's telling you exactly why most people don't know the secret. There's a hidden step. There's a hidden part. And unfortunately, it's often just living your life. You just gotta live your life.
I don't want to take credit for it. I only heard this from a rabbi in his words, because when you look up the story of Pardesh online, you are not going to find literally, allegorically, jurisdictionally, and secretly.
I see.
This part is well hidden.
Sure, that's the secret.
Yeah.
The secret is the secret. The secret is the secret here, and that's you really do have to know a thing or two to read any of this stuff. Even like I can name any of the greats, particularly let's just say like 19th, 20th century German philosophers, or earlier than that, let's just go right to Greek or any of the Latin stuff, people writing in Latin just to hide things. That's a whole nother topic. But you can't just read it, You really need to know what they're trying to tell you. A lot of times
you have to have mastered the 4 ways of interpretation. You can read it 4 times, once literally, once allegorically, once jurisdictionally, and once secretly.
That's beautifully said. And I think that we can end with this idea of, hey, look at this quote in the Bible. Like, it means this. We're like, well, I think it also means this and this and this. It's never one thing. And this story is the same. There's no difference. It's written like as if it's just reads like a Bible passage, And that's the point, is that it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to last you your whole life, where you read it again in 20 years like, oh, wow. And same thing with movies, especially now, people like me and you and anyone in, let's just say, shout out again to Interverse crew or anyone like that. You watch a movie you haven't seen in 10 years, it's like, oh my God.
That's awesome.
They were saying that, the whole time.
The new layers that get revealed are sometimes so mind-blowing.
Sure. Right, exactly. Like, super silly example, but my stepkids are a little older now, and they were watching the Batman, the animated series from the 90s, which had some great stuff. It was actually one of the better shows for sure. And Two-Face is that Batman villain, and he was hiding in the Janus Theater, which it makes perfect sense. Janus is the two faces of the end of January, the end of December, starting in January. We get the old man winter goes away, the new young year comes in. So Two-Face hiding in the Janus Theater. Just the little tiny things that you're like, wow, these guys really clearly had a lot of knowledge going on, and it's amazing. That's amazing.
If you choose that particular name, yeah.
Exactly. You don't even have to know who Two-Face is. Now it makes perfect. Janus Theater, Two-Face. That's Janus is the Two-Face. It's amazing, the little things that hide, So having said that, I'm excited to keep going here, and let's we'll take a tiny little break here. Everyone else out there, thank you so much as always. The viewership is growing on Rockfin. I have my Patreon is growing. Everything's starting to, fall into place as I had hoped for this show, because I really do put my heart and soul into it. And thank you. Your support really gives me it almost gives me the power to continue with the way I'm doing it, because I had this grand image and it changes over time. That's just how it goes, And that's why there's like little pieces of paper here that I'm not hiding anymore. I don't have time. I don't have time to clean up the desk thoroughly every single time. But, and thorough, there's another word with the GH that we don't need. So thank you. This has been so far just so on point, man. You really get my show as a fan, which I can't tell you how much I appreciate. And this is clearly a Third Eye episode and more. I'm learning right now. And that's part of the fun here at Third Eye Edify. So thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys for part 2. I'm looking forward to it.
My pleasure.